O que resta da popa do cargueiro Wakashio continua encalhado num recife da Ilha Maurícia. As operações de salvados começaram em fevereiro de 2021, mas foram interrompidas devido ao mau tempo. Os destroços deste cargueiro japonês vão ser relembrados durante décadas como uma das maiores catástrofes a atingir aquela pequena nação, um desastre agravado pela má gestão das autoridades locais.
On the 6th of August, the worst happened. Oil was poured into our lagoon, heavy fuel oil, and it spread all over the coastline, onto the beach, onto the waterfront, all the way up north to a place called Rivière des Créoles.
We tend to say that the ocean, the sea, is in our DNA as Mauritian, because when we were on the waterfront, there were a lot of people that came and poured tears when they saw the oil that were into the sea, and that somehow translates the deep relationship that we Mauritians we have with our sea.
There are strict laws, which regulate oil spillage, and Mauritius was supposed to ratify the convention in 2016, protecting all the states against oil spillage, but Mauritius did not. Had Mauritius done that in 2016, we could have claimed a minimum of $60 million.
Para além dos destroços do Wakashio terem originado um derrame de combustível devastador para uma das reservas naturais da ilha, também puseram em marcha um movimento de contestação que abalou o país. Eis a história do desastre do Wakashio. Esta é a Maurícia, uma ilha paradisíaca. Com o seu vulcão central e as suas planícies férteis, produziu durante séculos açúcar e têxteis para o mundo. Com uma população de apenas 1,3 milhões, é conhecida como a pérola do Oceano Índico e faz a ligação das rotas de África e do Oriente. O cargueiro Wakashio, dirigido pela Mitsui OSK e propriedade da Wakashio Maritime Corporation, saiu de Singapura a 17 de julho de 2020. O navio de 300 metros dirigia-se para o Brasil. O plano original era navegar a norte da ilha, mas o capitão optou por se dirigir para sul. 8 dias depois, quando o sol se punha sobre a Maurícia, o enorme cargueiro encalhou no recife de Blue Bay.
Well, everybody said that there was a birthday on that ship, and according to information I've got from some confirmed sources, effectively there was one birthday celebrated on board the ship. I think it was the birthday of one of the engineers, third or fourth engineer.
De manhã cedo, o ativista e jornalista independente Ruben Pillai estava no local.
Very early the next day, on Sunday morning, I was there before sunrise. I sent out the drone and I managed to have a good look at the ship. There was no damage to it. At that point, no one could imagine that it would become such an ecological catastrophe afterwards, because the ship appeared to be in good condition. It was not broken, it was just lying there on the reefs, surrounded by water and waves crashing up against it. It was actually a beautiful sight to behold.
O navio tinha embatido literalmente contra o recife, mas a ondulação forte ia soltá-lo e deslocá-lo. O que aconteceu continua a ser objeto de especulação. Terá havido uma festa a bordo que distraiu a tripulação? Ou haverá outra razão para o navio navegar tão perto da costa? Alain Malherbe é um capitão de profissão e dirigiu a sua empresa de transportes marítimos até se reformar.
When you look at the actual track of the Wakashio coming towards Mauritius, you can see that effectively the vessel was closing by the coast, but it is common practice for vessels, especially when you have crew which have remained on board for unexpected contract time, to close by the shore of any country they are sailing within the vicinity, to try to have a telecommunication, a telephone network, to catch a telephone network, because all these crew, they have mobile phones with roaming facilities. So getting in touch with a shore telecom service, it's easy for them to send quickly a small message to their relatives, just to tell them that they are okay, or to have some quick news.
No dia seguinte, o navio estava nas rochas e a guarda costeira mauriciana começou a evacuar a tripulação. A ilha estava a braços com o confinamento devido à pandemia de Covid-19. Numa série de reações lentas e inexplicáveis, o governo enviou a primeira unidade de guarda costeira a 29 de julho, 4 dias mais tarde, para avaliar o estado do navio. Do outro lado do mundo, uma chamada para a Smith Salvage, uma das mais proeminentes empresas de salvados do planeta, acionou 2 rebocadores que chegaram a 31 de julho, 6 dias após o acidente.
On the 25th of July, when the Wakashio wrecked itself, there should have been booms placed all around the vessel, so that in any case of oil spillage, or potential oil spillage, at least it will be contained only around the Wakashio. But obviously this has not been done. It was not about following protocols. It was about working towards the best interest of the country. And the best interest of the country at that very moment was to have a contingency plan to prevent any oil spillage. This was not been done. I think that this was not in the mindset of the one in power.
Well, the first error, which I said, the first error they made, that they did not put the boom around the ship. That was the first mistake. And the second mistake was, well, this is not really the responsibility of the Coast Guard or the Ministry of Environment, is that the salvors, they filled up the ship at the hatch number 9 with water, which increased the pressure on the stern part of the ship and which made that crack.
On the 5th of August, pictures started emerging on the internet showing that the ship had started to sink, that the waterline was very close to the topmost part of the stern, giving the impression that the rear part of the ship had started sinking a bit. And the Minister of Fisheries came and said that the pictures had been manipulated, that they were fake, and that the situation was under control.
O embate constante das ondas começou a abrir uma fenda ao longo do convés que desceu até ao casco. Nestas imagens recolhidas a 6 de agosto, 12 dias após encalhar, vemos a fenda no casco por onde sai o primeiro derramamento de combustível.
We were kind of following what was happening in Maibo and Point Disney from the 25th of July itself, when the Wakashio wrecked on the reef there. And we had news, I would say, mostly around probably the 4th of August 2020, that the possibility of an oil spillage was imminent. And on the 6th, when unfortunately this happened during the day, so we consulted different comrades from our political party. And at some point, David Sauvage, one of the member of our committee of the party, he came up with the idea of the booms confection. So he said that we needed to act now at that very moment because we felt that the government was not acting in the best interests of the ecosystem there, in the best interest of the people, in the best interest of the country itself, for some reason.
Now, we need to understand the situation at that time of the people living there. Our nation is largely dependent on tourism to survive. The people living in the coastal regions, they are fishermen, they live from tourism. If they are not fishermen, they are boat operators, they are tour operators, they work in the tourism sector.
Os habitantes da ilha apresentaram-se após o apelo para salvar as suas praias e revelaram muito engenho e espírito de entreajuda.
Irrespective of our religion, irrespective of our faiths, irrespective of our color of skin, irrespective of our of the job that we do, of our positions, everybody all around the island came together and worked together, and we started to make booms. It was an initiative of a political party called Résistance et Alternative, which means resistance and alternative, and they had the idea of making a boom to stop the progression of oil slicks on the surface of the water.
The booms were made out of sugarcane straw, and which is widely available here in Mauritius, and it was made also of green nets that we use on construction site, which is widely available here in Mauritius as well. And it was so the net was stuffed with those sugarcane straw, and also with empty plastic bottles that was used as floaters.
So the entire Mauritian nation came together, and in several places, everywhere there was sugarcane fields, people were picking up the dried leaves, and people were starting to make booms, and trucks were used to take the booms from those locations all the way down to the southeastern coast, and people were installing it on the side on the coast, along the entire coastline. And other volunteers got into suits and went down right into that oil and started scraping the oil out and putting them into drums. And we were working together.
Centenas e centenas de metros deste material natural de proteção e de baixo custo foram instaladas por toda a lagoa.
We started the first boom confection on the Maibo waterfront. It was around midnight, and we ended. It was, I would say, maybe 3:30 in the morning of the 7th of August 2020. And we tested the first prototype. It was around 4 a.m. And 3 comrades from Maibo that joined us in this journey. So they entered the cold water at 4 a.m. and we placed the first boom, and surprisingly it worked very well, in the sense that well, the first thing, it floated. The second thing, it also contained the oil that was in the water, and the third thing that we saw, it also kind of retained the oil that came in.
No entanto, a ira da população local não parava de aumentar.
The government, that did nothing to prevent this in the first place, they didn't see things the same way as we did, and they started calling us insignifiants in our local language. This means insignificant, and people started getting very angry at the way that the government handled this situation, because for 12 days they did not do anything.
What we organized was not only we organized from the waterfront, but the booms were placed at different places. And the interesting thing is We work with people, drones operators like you, and who helped us to map the different sea current so that we are more efficient in the placement of the booms.
A polícia interveio e o ministro do Ambiente definiu os manifestantes locais como pestes. Mal sabiam eles que a guarda costeira tinha equipamento profissional parado num armazém em Port-Louis, a capital do outro lado da ilha. À medida que a população se mobilizava, a tensão em relação ao governo aumentava e a polícia tornou-se bastante repressiva. A catástrofe ambiental foi intensificada pela localização dos destroços. Aqui mesmo, às portas de Pointe-Desny, existe uma reserva natural única, conhecida no mundo inteiro, devido à sua fauna e à sua flora marinha. O local onde o navio encalhou fica perto de duas áreas protegidas. Uma é a zona pantanosa, sobretudo as suas florestas de mangais, e a outra é o atol de coral que tinha sido protegido da intervenção humana para que espécies endémicas da Maurícia conseguissem restabelecer-se. Estas imagens do satélite Sentinel-2 mostram as diferentes consistências do combustível, com o muito denso a azul e o menos denso a amarelo. O combustível analisado revelou ser um combustível com baixo teor de enxofre.
So IMO, International Maritime Organization, with all the petrol suppliers, I think it was back in 2000, I think, they started to work on a new product, and then they agreed on the product which was manufactured, a special product called the VSLO, very low sulfur fuel oil. What happened effectively with the Wakashio, when she loaded that product in Singapore, the master, which is the current language, the captain of the ship was informed that there could be some risk of the engine running out of control or even risk of explosion in the main engine.
O combustível com que carregaram o Wakashio parece ter tido um papel de relevo na avaria dos motores do navio no pior momento.
When the Wakashio left the Malacca Strait and turned into a southerly direction on the route to go to Brazil, that was the initial route of Wakashio. On the 17th of July, the Wakashio had a first engine failure. In the meantime, the product was being analyzed both by the suppliers and by the owners of the ship. And when the owners received the actual result coming from the laboratory saying that effectively the product was of a very bad quality, that was on the 23rd of July, so he sent a mail to the ship informing the master to double up precaution, to double up surveillance on the main engine, because that product was very bad, and the ship herself and the crew, of course, were in danger because anything could happen.
A rota que o Wakashio seguiu desde que saiu do Estreito de Malaca com destino ao Brasil era incomum. Indo a navegar para sul, o navio virou à direita quando o mestre recebeu o relato sobre a fraca qualidade do combustível que estava a consumir.
The captain of the ship said that he called the Coast Guard and he called the port control in Mauritius for assistance, that he got no reply. And as from that moment, the engine were not running anymore, except the generators which were producing electricity, but the main engine driving the vessel was completely out of order.
A nova rota levava-o diretamente para a cidade mauriciana de Mahébourg. Mas ninguém parece ter notado.
The station at Pointe du Diable, I think we were talking of station at Pointe du Diable, they are all equipped with a radar, the conventional radar, and with the AIS as well. So if he sees a dot on the radar which he cannot guess what it is, if he looks at his screen of AIS, he will immediately see which ship it is, what's the direction of the ship, what's the speed of the ship, and where the ship is exactly, longitude, latitude, and the distance from the shore.
Se a rota não tivesse sido alterada novamente 2 horas antes do acidente, o desastre teria sido muito pior, uma vez que o navio teria atravessado o Recife.
Having been again in that industry for quite a long time, I've been sailing quite a long time on ships, on very long sea passages. I have never come across any ship's captain or ship's crew putting down their VHF radio while sailing, because we must keep in mind that a VHF radio is also a safety equipment which can save a life. So no mariner will sail with a VHF radio with the volume down, as the police said, or with the VHF radio off. This is impossible.
O motivo para o Wakashio ter embatido no recife do sudeste da ilha não é o único mistério que envolve este desastre.
Having been in that industry for 43 years, I can imagine that the captain thinking that better to run the ship aground if any problem arises, instead of going along the initial track towards Brazil and have an engine failure in the middle of the ocean where there would be no recourse to save them. So this, to my point of view, is one of the main reasons why the Wakashio came closer to Mauritius. When we saw that the engine went down to 0 RPM, you know very well that during July we have heavy swells and very strong winds coming from the south-southeast. So that current and that wind has been pushing up the vessel towards the reef. So it is not an intentional grounding.
A ineficácia das autoridades mauricianas é inexplicável. Foram chamados peritos de França e do Japão, apesar de toda a ilha estar em quarentena, para tentar impedir que a situação se agravasse. A 10 de agosto, a fenda no casco estava assim e os helicópteros da Guarda Costeira tentavam desesperadamente retirar o combustível antes que mais corresse para a lagoa.
People were at a loss. We didn't understand why there was this ship there, and at the same time was revealed to us by a member of Parliament. He was in the opposition party, and he published pictures of oil handling equipment that we had in the port area. So Mauritius had all this equipment, and we were supposed to have people trained to use that equipment. This was supposed to be contingencies in case such an incident, an oil spill, would happen in the port area, but they did nothing. The first thing that ought to have been done was, okay, we've got a ship that crashed there. We go out and we install booms all around the ship, so if there is any oil spill, it is contained right then and there before it reaches the coast. But they didn't do that. Why? Beats me. Nobody can explain. The government cannot explain why they didn't do anything.
Os destroços tinham assentado no Recife e interrompiam as correntes naturais que entram na lagoa. Isso levou à criação de um enorme baixio, onde as pessoas que tentavam aproximar-se do navio podiam estar. Os destroços estavam agora a afetar a geologia da lagoa também. A 15 de agosto, 3 semanas após o acidente, a proa de 250 metros do navio estava completamente separada do resto. A empresa de salvados disse que não lhes restava outra opção senão afundá-la em mar aberto. O governo anunciou que seria afundada a sudeste da ilha, mas antes disso teria de ser descontaminada. A credibilidade do governo também estava a afundar-se, mas em vez de dialogar com o povo, começou a desenvolver-se um clima de medo depois de várias ações de repressão.
The scrap value of the ship was around approximately 400 tons, 400 US dollar per ton. So if we try to work on a rough estimate of that ship, if they say that there is 7,000 tons left when she cracked, when the bow was sunk, so that ship was, I think, 30,000 tons. So 23,000 tons were sank for nothing. Now, if you multiply 23,000 tons by 400 US dollar per ton, that would have been a very good revenue for the country.
Entre protestos dos ambientalistas locais e de forma secreta, a proa do navio foi rebocada para o mar alto a 24 de agosto. Na incrível análise por satélite realizada pela empresa de inteligência artificial Windward, vemos que a empresa de salvados mudou de ideias em relação ao local onde a proa seria afundada. As duas embarcações da empresa Smith, Boca Expedition e Boca Summit, bem como o navio da Marinha Indiana, o Niriksak, rebocaram a carcaça para sudeste inicialmente, como mostram estas imagens de satélite. Ruben Pillai seguiu-os no mar alto, pondo em risco a própria vida.
We went out to the heavy seas, several kilometers out of the island. It was pretty scary, and it was very heavy waves, and the boat was going up and down. We were dumping off the crest of waves down to 3 meters, and we managed to see the actual bow of the ship being towed to the place where they've been wanting to scuttle it.
O navio acabou por ser afundado a nordeste da Maurícia. Segundo a empresa de salvados, não foram usados explosivos e a proa afundou quando a encheram de água.
At the end of the day, it proved very difficult for them to sink that ship. They were using fire hydrants on the tugboats to throw water into the empty ship, and they filled it with water, hoping that it would sink under the weight. But for several days, it just wouldn't sink. So at some point, we're questioning. There is a question as to whether they used explosives or not to pierce a hole at the bottom of the ship so that it would sink. But we have no information on that.
Nos dias seguintes, os mauricianos acordaram com uma visão trágica de golfinhos mortos ou moribundos nas suas praias imaculadas.
On the 25th of August, our worst fears materialized because melon-headed whales, which are a small species of whales that closely resemble dolphins, started washing up on the shores of Mauritius.
A guarda costeira e as autoridades locais tentavam agora encobrir a extensão da catástrofe, escondendo os cadáveres dos cetáceos. Mas os ativistas percorreram a costa em busca dos animais e filmaram estas cenas terríveis.
the fishermen had been told for several hours to use a machine, a bobcat, to lift up the dolphins and put them in the truck so that the truck can go, and traces of the dolphins would have disappeared. But they didn't want that from happening. They asked me to come there, and they said, come and film, show the world what is going on in our village, show them what this government is doing. And this is what I did. I started filming, and it was then, after filming, that they agreed to lift up the dolphins and put them on the truck, and I filmed the process. But even as I was doing so, a policeman came and told me and asked me if I was of the press. I said no, and then he showed me the way out, and he said, I'm not allowed to film here.
O desastre natural tinha agora alastrado até ao profundo Oceano Índico. O que teria acontecido para causar a morte destes mamíferos marinhos? Ruben Pillai decidiu descobrir.
And then later that day, we took a boat and we went into the sea near the reefs, where we had heard the Coast Guard were trying to push the dolphins, the melon-headed whales, away from the coast. And we saw a pod of whales, melon-headed whales. They are small whales, maybe 200 of them, all of them behaving very erratically. We saw a baby dolphin dead in the water. We met another team of fishermen in a boat, and they said that this one had just died. So what we did at this point, we picked up the body and we put it into the boat.
Depois de recolherem a cria de golfinho morta, os ativistas continuaram à procura de respostas na lagoa.
I wanted to find out what had happened to that baby whom we named Baby Brody. And as we went further up into the sea, and we saw what the other fishermen in the other boat said was the mother of Baby Brody, and she had been accompanying the baby until the baby died, and she was in a very stressed state. She was swimming on only one flipper. Half her body was down was on the side in the water, and she was turning around in circles, and she was letting out this sorrowful sound of, it was like she was mourning. And right before our eyes, this mother died. She took upon a vertical position into the water. Only her head was out of the water, and we did not know. We were helpless.
Enquanto isso, Ruben queria saber mais e percorria a orla marítima com o seu drone. O número exato de cetáceos que morreram nunca será conhecido, mas pelo menos 50 foram contados. Mais uma vez, o governo tentou encobrir a extensão do desastre.
And I found a fisherman who had agreed to keep Baby Brody in a freezer in his house. He was, of course, very afraid to do it.
Ligaram a um cirurgião veterinário para supervisionar via WhatsApp uma necrópsia ao golfinho recolhido na praia. O que encontraram era inacreditável.
We managed to get in touch with a group of people from abroad. One guy, a French guy, who was specialized in animal necropsies. So he guided us, a team of people here, actually two people here, me and some other person who doesn't want to be named, and we cut the animal open. We were doing this through a WhatsApp call. It lasted more than 6 hours, and we did a necropsy of dead baby Brody. And before we opened up baby Brody, the man told us what we should expect to find.
Ruben Pillay procurava provas que indicassem que a morte do baby Brody e de dezenas de cetáceos estava relacionada com o afundamento da proa do Wakashio.
He said that if it was an explosion that frightened the dolphin, if it was the sonar of the bathymetric survey that frightened the dolphins, their death would have been caused by rapid resurfacing, which is called a decompression sickness. And if that is the case, we would see bubbles of air on the sacs surrounding their organs in the body of the animals. And this is exactly what we saw when we opened up baby Brody.
Por algum motivo, os cetáceos tinham subido à superfície demasiado depressa, o que causou a formação de bolhas de azoto no sangue. As cicatrizes nos seus focinhos mostram que nadaram de encontro ao recife sem o verem, por não conseguirem usar o seu sonar interno.
The government had conducted a survey, a bathymetric scan, which uses sonar in connection with the Wakashio there on the 22nd of August. And 3 days later, the melon-headed whales started washing up dead on the coast.
A empresa de salvados tinha afundado a proa do Wakashio numa zona onde os cetáceos costumam dar à luz as suas crias. E numa zona de correntes marítimas que irão empurrar os destroços e os poluentes na direção da Reunião e da Maurícia durante as próximas décadas. Um erro inexplicável. A tragédia que envolve o Wakashio não acaba aqui. No final de agosto de 2020, as autoridades mauricianas decidiram acelerar a extração de combustível da carcaça da polpa do Wakashio. Um dos rebocadores usados para rebocar as barcaças de combustível era o cerca, filmado aqui ao lado dos destroços.
There was a barge that was involved in the salvage operation, and an order was given by the port authorities for a tug, an old rusted tug, the Sergaitan, to go and fetch that barge. And the weather wasn't good. An accident occurred, and the tugboat sank. Some people on board managed to survive, but 4 did not.
The tug Sagaitan is a very old tug, I don't remember her age, and everybody knows in the port, including the director of shipping, who has the power to arrest any vessel not having the adequate certificate to sail out of a port. That specific tug was an old one, badly maintained, with no certificates at all, so that tug wasn't seaworthy. So even though human beings were sent on that tug to their death.
Estas imagens recolhidas pelos mergulhadores durante a remoção subaquática do combustível do navio parecem mostrar que a barcaça embateu no rebocador, abrindo um buraco no casco abaixo da linha de água e provavelmente cuspiu os membros da tripulação borda fora. Foi uma tragédia nacional.
Divers were sent down there to find out what happened and to recover evidence. And pictures were posted on the Indian Navy page. It was upon digging into that Indian Navy page that I found those pictures of the sunken Sargaiton, and I managed to have a good look at the crack of the Sargaiton. I was able to match the picture of the crack and the position of the bullets on the barge.
We entered another level of engagement via what I will call the social mobilization. So the first important one after the Wakashio was on the 29th of August in the capital city of Port Louis, where we have like over 100,000 of people that were on the street it was, I would call it most of an outcry of the population of Mauritius against the way that this was handled by the government.
O desastre do Sargaiton foi o pior em todo o incidente do Wakashio. 4 homens perderam a vida ao tentar salvar a orla marítima da Maurícia. E a opinião pública virava-se gradualmente ainda mais contra o governo. Enquanto isso, os protestos na ilha não paravam de crescer. A resposta lenta das autoridades ao desastre, a sua incapacidade para se ocupar do derramamento e a demora a deter o capitão fez com que a ira da população se alastrasse e esta encheu as ruas da capital, Port Louis, a 29 de agosto. Pressionado pelos protestos em massa, o governo decidiu então deter o capitão e investigar o que realmente tinha acontecido.
On the 29th of August, we protested. More than 60,000 people, Mauritians, flooded the streets of Port Louis in protest against that government. Because we were not happy in the way that the Wakashio situation was dealt with. We were not happy that they sunk the front portion of the ship and caused the death of the dolphins. There were also several other issues.
Em novembro de 2020, o governo mauriciano entregou à empresa chinesa de salvados Lianyungang Dali Underwater Engineering a tarefa de remoção dos destroços. Mas os trabalhos só começaram a 15 de fevereiro de 2021. Foi quando começaram a cortar a popa do navio. Trouxeram a barcaça-grua Ongbang 6. Só existem 3 assim no mundo.
Initially, they said it would take three to 4 months. This is what was said. But now we are closing to 1 year now, because we are nearly end of the year, closing end of the year. So February, the Ongbang was there. We will be February very soon, and the Wakashio is still there. So I think we are going for at least two more years.
Shin Kwang-ha, uma barcaça semi-submersível, veio com a grua para recolher as partes retiradas e transportá-las circundando a ilha até Port Louis, onde são descontaminadas. As autoridades mauricianas ainda não fizeram qualquer investigação para saber o que realmente aconteceu naquela noite fatídica. A caixa negra com os dados da viagem ainda não foi analisada, o que poderia explicar as mudanças de rota, e o julgamento do capitão e da tripulação só há pouco tempo começou. O incidente do Wakashio tornou-se símbolo do que não estava bem nessa ilha paradisíaca. E pode nunca se vir a saber o que aconteceu naquela noite fatídica. Demasiados eventos inexplicáveis parecem fazer deste o naufrágio mais absurdo de sempre.